Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Regional Transportation Committee for Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Here we are at 8:30 in the morning on the first floor of the building. We're in the Aspen and Birch conference rooms. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeff Baker, the chair of DRCOG, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to address this board? See behind me? I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand. Do we have anybody online that would like to have public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will give it a moment, but I do not see any hands online either.
Raise your hand if you're online and you would like to make public comment to the Regional Transportation Committee. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 3 on our agenda. This is the RTC meeting summary from April 15th, 2025. Has anyone had a chance to look at this and notice any corrections or amendments that need to be made? Seeing none, then those minutes, those meeting summary will stand as published. We have one action item this morning. This is amendment to the 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program, and we're going to hear from Josh Schwenk, Senior Planner with DRCOG. Good morning, Mr. Schwenk. When you get your presentation up, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that while I get situated. So I'll handle the amendments kind of in batches this morning. So the first 2 on our list are for RTD. I do want to temper expectations a little bit. This is not new funding coming to RTD. This is existing funding from the previous 2024 to 27 Transportation Improvement Program. When we transition to the new 26 to 29 TIP, we remove funding associated with projects that we believe have been completed. We did hear from FTA that some of those projects have not fully closed out yet, so we do still need to reflect that funding in the TIP. So this amendment would just be to add that funding back into the prior year section. As well as on the first preventive maintenance project there, we're also making a slight adjustment to the scope to add in rail maintenance. As you all are aware, quite a bit of rail maintenance has been happening around the region, so we wanted to make sure that is adequately reflected. The next 2 projects for I-70 West Metro Bridges and I-25 and the Spear and 23rd interchange are CDOT Region 1 projects. They are removing some of the funding from both of these projects and reallocating that to the Floyd Hill project. Ordinarily on these, you would see sort of a line item where that funding is removed and a line item where it's added back in. Floyd Hill is within Clear Creek County, so it's not within the MPO area covered by our TIP, so that's why you don't see the funding coming back in, but that is where that funding is being moved to. For both of these projects, from what we've heard from CDOT, there should not be major impacts to these projects in the TIP. For West Metro Bridges, every bridge that is ready for construction has advanced to construction, while the others are still in design and not ready for this funding just yet. And for Spear and 23rd interchange, it is also not yet ready for construction. They are advancing $22 million from future years into the 2029 out year of the TIP to set it up for construction. Our final project is a new project for CDOT Region 1. This will add $8.3 million in state legislative funding to upgrade equipment associated with over 140 ramp meters around the region, as well as the central operating system that operates those meters. So happy to take any questions about any of those. Otherwise, I do have a proposed motion available for you in your packets.
All right, questions? All seemed pretty straightforward. Just want to give a few minutes maybe to let it sink in. All right, I would be looking for a motion to recommend to the DRCOG Board of Directors the attached project amendments to the 2026 and 2029 TIP. Is there a motion? I see Director Silverstein.
Second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Hoagland. Thank you. Any further discussion at this point? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries and we have approved our action item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and go on to item number, I think you have a little more time. Let's go to the first discussion items, number 5, fiscal year 2028 Transportation Improvement Program, Programming, Attachment C in your packet. We're going to hear from Project and Program Delivery Manager, Mr. Todd Cottrell, sorry about that. Yeah. It's a Todd talk. Thank you. Good morning. You have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you. And that's kind of actually how this might end up turning out to be. So we'll see. All right. So we have a lot to discuss today, and we actually have some new items that I do want to bring to your attention that are not included on this PowerPoint that may sort of change our frame of mind going here into the future. But this morning did want to talk about adjusting the next years of the TIP and what that would look like, and of course the reasons behind that. And sort of, if that was to complete, that would free up FY28 funding to be programmed, and then what that possibly could look like, and then of course, what are the next steps after that. So why even propose this? Why adjust the next years of the TIP? So as we all know, and according to federal law, the TIP implements the Regional Transportation Plan, in this case, DRCOG's 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. We have historically done that. We have not had any federal pushback or any state pushback in terms of that type of relationship. But of course, over the last couple of years, we have certainly strengthened that relationship through the application by adding in the RTP investment priorities. It has a very high weight in terms of relationships to new projects that are being proposed. And unfortunately, sort of a side effect, which was not caused by any one thing, it was just sort of turned out to be that way. Both the RTP and the TIP have historically had very similar adoption timelines. All at the same time, and it sort of created a situation the last couple times we've run across this where TIP funding was being recommended and approved was contingent on, of course, the RTP being adopted. So a little bit of a backward situation. And we certainly do not ever want to run to a situation where the RTP happens to be delayed or not approved, and there's TIP funding that potentially just could not go forward because, again, it was based on the relationship that these documents have. That really creates some issues and undue burdens from a staff perspective, because there's always that possibility that the projects being selected through the TIP process are not going to be based on the most current and updated RTP priorities. And so we would like to fix that a little bit. We would like to adjust the future TIP timelines so at a minimum, those calls for projects for the RTP has taken place, if not the RTP being already adopted. And so our sort of proposal is sort of two-pronged here. Just a little bit of context, DRCOG does adopt a TIP every 2 years. That's mainly to align from the state's perspective because the statewide transportation improvement program is adopted annually. So we adopt a new TIP every 2 years, even though calls for projects, or at least main calls for projects, are held every 4 years. Just went through a TIP cycle 2 months ago. You did make a recommendation to adopt the 26 to 29 TIP. And of course, that next 2-year cycle would create a new TIP document for 28 to 31. However, so that we can allow the RTP process to essentially be completed, that's already underway, we would propose to move that 28 to 31 TIP cycle to 29 to 32. that does set up a new timeline for that next tip with just coming this January or early next year, we would begin those tip policy discussions in 2027, hold those calls for projects, and of course, throughout 28, work to actually create and adopt that document. If that change was to go through, that would essentially free up FY 28. Our last calls for projects essentially programmed funding through 2027. And if we skipped a year and went with the next tip being 29 to 32, FY 28 would not be programmed, and the proposal that we would put forward would go ahead and program that later this year.
Question or a comment, Ron?
There we go. Thank you. Ron Papsdorf, DRCOG. Just to put a finer point on sort of the why behind this. So as you all are aware, we're in the process of updating our long-range regional transportation plan now, but that process is not going to be completed until the end of 26. So the reason we're having this conversation is so that we can get through that planning process so that we can couch the next set of investments decisions in the transportation improvement program based on the most current set of priorities, because our current, if we didn't do some sort of action to sort of reset the time frame for the next tip, we'd be basing those tip decisions for those future years on the existing RTP. And it made sense to us to think about, get through that RTP process, make sure that we're all aligned with our long-term priorities as the basis for the next tip. So that's kind of, I just wanted to put a finer point. Todd said it, but I just wanted to very specifically make that connection to the RTP timing and this discussion.
Thanks, Ron. So the next set of slides really give us an idea of what possibly that fiscal year 28 program would look like. This is a process that we would come to this committee to seek recommendation and ultimately go to the board. We are actually thinking that that might be slightly delayed than what we initially thought, so most likely we would be coming back here in August. That process would begin shortly after that, late August into September. And it consists of two individual steps. So we have an existing, in our existing policy, we have a process for the wait list programming, so we would follow that process. But we would also introduce a new step to issue a new call for projects. Now on the screen here, it says an estimated $90 million would be available, and we'll get into a little bit of context here, but that has now been, we're thinking that's closer to $80 million. And like I said, it will require both committee and board action to sort of modify this process. This is sort of where we get a little bit off track with some new information that has come forth over the last month, but especially within the last week. But I do want to go through this process, this programming process, as we're proposing it here. Again, this is just for discussion. We're not actually seeking recommendation on this, but just go forward and explain what that process potentially would look like if we were to move forward. And then I'll circle back at the end and sort of explain reasons why we think this might not be the most logical next step in our process. So step one is waitlist program. So again, we have an existing process for this. We have in the 26 to 29 tip, we essentially have 9 individual wait lists. We have one for the regional share and then one for each sub-regional forum. This is totally a process that is from the sponsor perspective and DRCOG staff. We don't need to go back to the forum to seek approval if a project on the wait list accepts any wait list funding. And we believe it would be the proper thing to do to begin with the regional share wait list, just because that has the potential to have effects for all throughout the other 8 sub-regional forums. And then, of course, once the regional share wait list process is done, we would work with each 8 individual forums to run through their process. Now, it is going to, certainly we're going to be moving on to step 2 in this process. So if any unprogrammed funding remains in any one given forum, they will move into step 2, which is a call for projects. For example, the Adams Forum does not currently have any projects on their wait list. So we already know that they will automatically move into step 2, but it's certainly possible others will move into that step, being able to get through their wait list and still have remaining funding. Regarding that call for projects, again, this is a step that's sort of outside the realm of the existing policy. So if we propose this to go forward, this is part of what we would seek a recommendation on. And again, call for projects is going to only be for those individual forums that have funding remaining after step 1. There's a multitude of things we will probably change from the normal process, so we'll probably shorten that call for projects. We're going to go through and just use the previous applications and the criteria we have. We may even have to slightly adjust eligibility to sort of be based on the funding types that we have available. And that is certainly possible. This is a process, the new call for project process certainly will go through and seek a forum recommendation, and then ultimately we'll bring those collection of projects back through as a single policy amendment, so it will come to this committee again. And then if we go forward, we'll certainly provide some additional details. Funding is a little interesting. We have a current federal transportation bill, but that ends at the end of federal fiscal year 26. We have no idea what it looks like beyond that. The normal process for any bill on the federal level is to have a continuing resolution, mostly 1 or 2 years. Very rarely is a bill adopted that sort of picks up without continuing the existing bill that's in place. So we're really all in the dark, and even see that sort of guessing on what that may look like. As I said earlier, when this information was put together, we were thinking about $90 million was going to be available. We have now internally kind of moved that down to $80 million to be a little bit more reflective, and we'll explain that here in a second. But what we would first do is take $11.5 million sort of off the top for the set-asides. That essentially would continue all the current set-asides we have at the current funding levels, and just extend that out to FY28. Remaining funds would be split 20% to the regional share and 80% to the sub-regional share. So again, the numbers on the screen here are not exact. It is a little bit lower than that. And even continuing that down as a breakdown to the sub-regional share, the totals would be a little bit less than that, anywhere from maybe a couple $100,000 to maybe $2 million, depending on the total amount. So again, it just gives you a sense of idea of what may be out there. So what's next? I did outline a little bit of this earlier in terms of the change in this process. We have had discussions with TAC, with the board. We're having this discussion with you now. Hopefully, again, we're thinking if this proposal goes forward, we would be looking at an August board adoption, and then picking up and starting that process right after that into early September. This is where we sort of get a little bit off track with some new information that's come to light, again, over the last few weeks, but especially in the last week. So first of all, with the Multimodal Options Fund program, hopefully you've all heard of that. The state reduced this program's total by approximately $72 million. Once CDOT was able to look at that number and look at project closeouts and reconciliation, they were able to reduce that down to around $52 million statewide. DRCOG's portion of that reduction is around $28 to $29 million. However, CDOT is allowing us to look at this a little bit of a larger scale. So we're able to look at what was allocated to DRCOG FY20 to FY29. So that gives us a little bit of breathing room. But really, those reductions are coming in a couple different ways. First of all, it sort of reduces the amount that we have to allocate in FY28 and 29 down to 0. And again, when we look at this FY20 to 29, that whole 10-year period, the actual reduction to existing projects is approximately $4.9 million. So ultimately, within the next few months, we're going to have discussions with sponsors to reduce $4.9 million worth of projects. The second thing that didn't come about until last Wednesday is actually a reduction in the federal funds. So CDOT goes through an annual reconciliation process, typically about this time. And with those numbers to our existing program in FY 26 and 27, that reduction to DRCOG is approximately $10 million. So we're also going to have to find ways to essentially take $10 million off of existing projects that are already programmed. It is possible that we may be able to work some magic behind the scenes and carry some of those reductions out to future years, just based on how much money we sort of have sitting around that's allocated but not yet, or programmed but not yet allocated to individual projects. But I don't believe we will certainly get to all of that reduction. We're also we took a step back and looked at this from the sponsor's point of view. Any sponsors in this room. So essentially what this would mean is having a discussion about MMOF fund reduction, about federal funding reduction, dealing with the FY 28 wait list and calls for projects, coming up early part of next year, having the 29 to 32 policy discussions, and then a year after that, having those regional and sub-regional share calls for projects. So there's a large collection of things, and it really sort of made us start thinking if going ahead with the FY 28 programming was in the best interest of everyone. A couple options to think about that we were sort of kicking around is, well, what if we didn't program FY 28, which would allow us to sort of spread out the MMOF funding, possibly move some of that federal funding reduction from projects perhaps that are in the out years to 28, again, helping us free up a little room. Then also with that remaining FY 28 funding, we could add that into the next call for projects from 29 to 32. It gives us a little bit more funding to deal with in that first year, which historically, based on applications, we always have a lot more application requests come in for that first year of funding than what we actually have funding for. So again, some things that we're sort of thinking about, but I will sort of conclude in terms of what we are thinking. This slide, in terms of the proposal. We are fairly confident that we will bring forward a proposal to at least request moving the next tip from 28 to 31 out to 29 to 32. At this point, we're a little less confident about programming the FY 28, but there's still some discussions to be had internally to figure out what our next move is. So with that, happy to take any questions or comments. There's a lot of information. From even a staff perspective, there's a lot of unknowns still.
Questions? Deborah Mulvey, Director Mulvey.
Thank you. When we discuss projects that are in process with respect to the 4.9 and the 10 that you referred to and cuts, are they in build status? Is the category you're referring to the ones that are in build status, design status, or just in the queue as in process?
We have already started talking internally a little bit about sort of what would be the pecking order to sort of look at. So I think we would first concentrate on projects that are in those outer years, perhaps that don't have IGAs, that have not already started their project. I mean, ultimately, we really do not want to mess up a sponsor's project if it's already in progress in some form or fashion. Some of this, we may be able to think about some massive funding swaps and sort of to try to not eliminate any elements of existing projects. We haven't gotten that far yet. It's sort of like a big knot right now. We're sort of trying to think about each strand and pull it apart. There's multiple things that we can do. It's just a matter of doing the right thing in the right order to create the least amount of harm to the existing program of projects.
Other questions? Shelley Cook.
Is it on? Yeah. Just 28 aside, does, this realign going forward? Is this a fix for future cycles as well?
Ron?
Gosh darn it. You would think after 7 years I'd know how to work these mics. Yes, with a caveat. Since we are required to do a major update to our regional transportation plan every 4 years, and we are required to have a 4-year TIP, this will get us in alignment in the future, except for sometimes our update cycle on the RTP sort of messes that schedule up a little bit. So, for instance, part of the reason we're a little off sequence on this RTP was because we had to do a major update to the regional transportation plan as a result of the state greenhouse gas emission reduction rule. We had just adopted the 2050 RTP, and then a year later, we had to go through a major update to respond to the state greenhouse gas rule. And that put us on a new 4-year cycle on the RTP. And so there are things that can happen in the future. We may need to make an adjustment again, but in theory, yes, this will sort of set up that cycle if everything stays on schedule.
Other questions? Director Rex.
Maybe take your mic away.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And Todd, thank you for this. I know staff spent a stupid amount of time trying to figure out all the scenarios and gymnastics associated with this. And we're actually meeting this afternoon to have a larger conversation. You know, I think just looking at it on its face, you know, deferring the 28 calls seems to be the cleanest right now, and it maybe provides an opportunity for us to catch up a little bit on some projects. But you'll be seeing this at least a couple more times before, you know, something ever ends up being what it is. But I think, you know, we're really going to lean on the sub-regional forums to have conversations about this as well, and get, you know, I think ultimately we want to, you know, implement the projects that are currently in the TIP. Now, if some of those are deferred a little bit, then that's what might happen. No one wants to be in this place, but we are where we are, so stay tuned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Director Mulvey.
As a follow-up to that, on the sub-regional side, would you be working with the technical groups to get that accomplished and work on those priorities?
Yes, all the above.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the committee's indulgence. I'm going to move to an administrative item, just taking it a little bit out of sequence, but one of our members has to leave early. So I'd like to ask for Michael to give us his update from the RAC.
Yes, and thank you, and thank you for accommodating my schedule this morning. I need to leave in just a few moments, but wanted to just provide a few updates. It's a little quiet at the Regional Air Quality Council right now. Lots of internal things going on, so announcements aren't large, but a couple things to share. The RAC will be hosting the next Transportation, Environment, and Resource Council meeting, the TERC. Many of you are involved or have team members involved in the TERC. And so the RAC will be hosting fall meeting, and so that's the first time we'll be providing that the space and the and for that meeting. So for that as then we are waiting for the governor to appoint our next board. We have about a third of our board is terming off, and we're waiting for the new board members to be appointed, and then we'll get them oriented and in place. And so that new board will, I'm sure, have you know, something to say about how we do our work at RAC, and we'll need to accommodate that new direction. And finally, the RAC will be hosting workshops in the coming months to evaluate emission control strategy approaches for improving our air quality. And It's summertime ozone season now. Thankfully, we've had a pretty good year so far, and it's really due to the weather that we've had. It's cooler. It's a more turbulent. The rain always helps, and so we need hot, sunny days to and a string of days to really allow our pollutants to build up. And thankfully, we've had good meteorology this year. Our workshops, though, are designed to be forward-thinking so that we can develop what we're terming a blueprint for our future air quality programs. And we'll be hosting 2 meetings, one in July and one in August. The July meeting is right here. DRCOG has graciously providing space for our meeting and helping us with our logistics. And then our second meeting will be in Fort Collins. And so we're trying to, of course, represent our entire large region in the range. For you, are interested, would love to have you with us, and or of course your staff. Everyone's invited. Our agendas and announcements will be coming. That's my update this morning. Any questions? I defer back to the agenda.
Questions for Michael? I'm not seeing anyone, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to go back to discussion items. Item number 6 in your packet, which is attachment D. This is a discussion about community-based transportation planning program, our update of that, and we've got sub-area and project planning. Yes, project planning program manager Nora Curran.
Great, thank you, Chair.
Good morning,
everyone. So today I just wanted to provide a little bit of an update on one of our new set-aside technical assistance programs. It's kind of a mid-year check-in since we haven't shared recently about this effort. And then I also wanted to highlight an upcoming call for projects related to this program. So just a refresher, the Community-Based Transportation Planning Program was established a couple of years ago. Its focus is supporting our member governments on improving mobility for marginalized and low-income communities in the region. So it has a couple kind of key elements, including extensive community engagement, implementation-oriented, really focusing on the communities that the program is hoping to target. But the types of projects that this program is covering range really widely, which you'll see here in a second, everything from corridor studies to school transportation plans. So just to, again, refresher on the program structure, we started this with a pilot program in 2022 and had 2 projects, which have now wrapped up, and we've had a lot of great lessons learned from that pilot effort. And then since then, it's been formally established as a TIP set-aside in the 2024 to 2027 TIP, and there was $2.5 million allocated to this effort. And so now the general structure is that these projects are nominated by local governments, regional agencies, or community organizations. So nonprofits are eligible to nominate projects for this program. But like some of our other new set-aside programs, the funds are retained and managed by us at DRCOG. The goal there is to really make this as seamless and easy for the kind of project sponsors as possible. They don't have to get an IGA with CDOT. We kind of help do all the procurement ourselves and keep it simple for everybody. So just a recap, I think I've mentioned or presented on one of these before, but we had 2 pilot projects, which I won't go into tons of detail, but happy to share more info if either of them are of interest. The first was our Edgewater School Transportation Plan, which is really focused on safety and traffic for 2 elementary schools in the city of Edgewater after the closure of a nearby elementary school that resulted in a lot of families having to change their travel patterns and cross Colfax. So we did conclude the study last year and had a number of recommendations, including a pop-up kind of temporary infrastructure, which has been in place since the project concluded. So lots of great recommendations and kind of lessons from this project. Had a lot of fun working with some elementary school students, which is always fun. Our second project we just recently wrapped up. So this was we called the North Federal Community Transportation Plan. And it was a partnership between Adams County, City of Westminster, a nonprofit called Growing Home, and our consultant team at Fair and Piers. And it was really taking a section of Federal, kind of north of Denver, south of 80th, Federal Boulevard, where we learned that a pharmacy, or Walmart closed, which actually created a food desert and a pharmacy desert. And so Growing Home had reached out to the city of Westminster and said, hey, you know, our constituents, our clients are really having trouble just accessing food. And a lot of that was the transportation challenge, because there's not a lot of great kind of smaller scale transportation options in that area. So we ended up recommending a microtransit zone, which is actually cross-jurisdictional, which is a little tricky, but it would, our recommendation is that Adams County would take the lead. You can kind of see the zone here. It's kind of south of 36, generally north of West 64th Avenue, between Sheridan and kind of the crook of all the interstates at 25, 76, and 36. So all these dots here are some of the key destinations the community helped identify: a lot of low-income housing, housing for seniors, and then grocery stores to really help folks be able to make those first last mile trips to get to where they need to go. So that's just, again, a quick kind of refresher of the types of projects. You can see they range really widely, which has been fun for our team to kind of get to dive into different types of transportation planning. We do have 5 projects that you all helped approve 6 months or so ago, and those have actually all now kicked off. So we're doing a corridor study in Federal Heights, a kind of implementation plan for 2 community developed projects in Denver, a circulation plan in Brighton, a corridor study in Adams County along Pecos, and then another microtransit study with Commerce City. So all 5 of these are now underway, so we're working with kind of all the different stakeholders on these. We have seen, you know, a couple of common challenges which we'll be applying as we kind of continue to expand and grow this program. Of course, you know, engaging communities that have historically not been super involved in transportation planning is a challenge. They're not going to show up at a public meeting at 6 o'clock at, you know, the library. So that's kind of figuring out how to best engage folks, particularly Spanish speakers, who maybe have been left out. Has been hard. Not surprisingly, funding is really challenging. A lot of these communities, particularly the ones that are kind of on the front line of some of the challenges in our region, whether it's access to food or access to transportation, really need immediate solutions. So that's been tough, you know, balancing the demand for something next month, next year, with the realities of what we all know of how long it can take projects to happen. And then we've also seen, you know, there are a lot of cross-jurisdictional boundary challenges, which can complicate these projects. We have had a couple kind of opportunities we've been really working on. So we've had some great partnerships with nonprofits. Just the example of Growing Home, they're in the food space. They're a food bank and provide a lot of direct services. Know nothing about transportation, but they know their community really well. So that's been a great partnership. We've been out in the community a lot, talking to folks in kind of different places than we normally go. We've been experimenting with incentives, food, other accommodations to kind of make our events as welcoming as possible, working with libraries and other kind of non-traditional partners. And then as kind of in Edgewater, we saw some great success with being able to get some stuff out there quickly. So just in conclusion, we do have an upcoming call for projects for the last 2 years of the current funding, which is 2026 and 2027. We're expecting that to be this October. So if you have any projects you know of, definitely feel free to start thinking about those. And we are expecting to combine calls for projects with the two of the other set-aside programs, the Livable Centers and Innovative Mobility, to help make it a little bit simpler to potential applicants. So with that, happy to take any questions if there are any.
Questions for Nora? Yes, Jacob? I'm just want to say I'm glad other people have as much problem with these microphones as I do. So,
going to blame the technology. That's right. No, I just want to take a sec to recognize Nora and her team for this work. This is a brand new program for DRCOG. Well, it's not brand new, but it is new now. We've been working on it for 1.5 years, 2 years. But when we started, it was a brand new program. We had not done this work exactly this directly before. There was no template for how to do this work. Every project is unique. Every project is different. Every project has its own challenges and opportunities. So Nora and her team have really come in and just done a fantastic job on each of these projects and really creating a body of work on how to do this community-based planning program. So I just want to recognize Nora and her staff on this work. Thanks.
Thank you, Jacob. Yes, Erin?
Did I do it right? Yay! I just want to echo that and commend DRCOG for engaging in this style of work. From the housing space, we do a lot more than just build housing. It's really about communities and thinking about how to be responsive to community needs. And so the more that folks in whatever area you are, that where your depth of expertise is, I think the more that we're broadening that out to look at projects like this and really elevate those and look at how to incorporate that, I think is really important. So I just wanted to share that I really appreciate that you all have engaged in this work in this way.
Thank you very much. Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and I certainly echo the comments that they made, especially to Nora and her team and the work they've done. I think you all really enjoyed the opportunity to get out and get your hands a little dirty out in the communities, and I truly appreciate that. Listen, this is, I think, as Jacob mentioned, we're very proud of this program. This is brand new for us. I mean, it was in the last tip that we created the set aside, and we came across this concept actually when we were facilitating the RTD Accountability Committee. We were doing some research and came across this idea, and we thought it was wonderful. Thought we should bring it forward. Listen, as planners, we think we know what communities need or want with regards to transportation services, and sometimes we miss, right? And the opportunity to get out in the communities and actually learn, I think, has really, really been, it's been just, inspiring for us, right, to see that, which has been wonderful. But also, I think, on the other side, it helps build some trust and confidence in the communities that we are listening to their needs. And it's not just, that confidence in DRCOG, because quite frankly, they don't know us from Adam in most cases, right? But for our local governments, right, that are partners in this, creating that relationship that probably those communities did not have, I think has been a wonderful addition to this. And hopefully this continues forward in future tips. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Shelley Cook.
Thank you, and I would echo all of that and tell you, I grew up in that area off of Federal and represented a part of it when I was on the RTD board, and so pretty familiar with it. And I think the solutions you've identified are really good ones, and I'm anxious to see how that all pans out once it's implemented. Thanks, Nora.
We'll definitely be hearing from her again. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to discussion item number 7. This is the Regional Multimodal Freight Plan update, and we've got Senior Planner Cole Nieder here to present. Good morning, Cole. You have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cole Nieder. I am DRCOG's Senior Transit Planner and the Project Manager for maintaining and updating DRCOG's Regional Multimodal Freight Plan. This plan is a crucial tool for guiding freight-related planning and infrastructure investments throughout our region. And between this year and next, we are updating that document, and I wanted to give you guys a primer for that today. Just to set an agenda, I do want to cover a couple different topics in our presentation today. That includes the background and purpose of DRCOG's freight plan and DRCOG's role in freight planning within the region. Also the goals and different components that we have in our current freight plan. And then a closer look at what we're doing as part of the freight plan update for 2025. So just for a bit of background, DRCOG's multimodal freight plan was first developed by the agency in 2020. And it guides freight planning investments across all modes. That includes highway, rail, air, and pipeline. It also supports infrastructure investment decisions and aligns freight-related planning goals with our MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan. We generally update this plan every 4 to 5 years as our goals evolve and also different freight-related best practices and technologies advance as well. And CDOT just updated their statewide freight plan, so this was a good time to update our own. I always like to put this slide up because it does kind of highlight our planning document and how it interacts with other planning documents with our agency partners and also at the regional and federal and state levels as well. First, the Federal Highway Administration's National Freight Strategic Plan that sets national freight goals that align with the FAST Act and the IIJA, and also identifies challenges facing our national freight system. And then there's CDOT's statewide freight plan, which provides a comprehensive freight system overview for the state of Colorado. It also identifies critical freight corridors, so think of I-25, I-70, and I-76, for examples, and then also establishes strategic goals at a high level to provide a roadmap for different projects, policies, and initiatives to be implemented down. And then at the regional level, DRCOG focuses on kind of the unique needs of the Denver metropolitan area. And through our planning efforts, we assess different congestion in urban corridors. We also identify bottlenecks on our freight routes and distribution networks. And we assess the effects of freight movements on our local communities and who live in our distribution networks. I do want to go over the freight planning goals that we set forth in our current 2020 freight plan. And these will help align with different federal guidance that we adhere by. And then we might modify these in our new plan update, but these will at least serve as a starting point and kind of a guiding point for our update going forward. First, that would be engaging regional stakeholders and businesses. So think of our involvement in the Freight Advisory Committee and in different stakeholder meetings that we host on a quarterly basis. Second, we align with different federal freight guidance, specifically freight guidance that's levied towards CDOT. Third, we educate and support local planning efforts through better data and input and analysis. And then finally, we position DRCOG and our member governments for freight-related funding opportunities as well. So as part of both the existing plan and then our upcoming freight plan update, these are just a few examples of the activities that we completed during the first iteration of our freight plan and what we plan on continuing forward into our 2025 update as well. And this just, and we'll go into a bit more detail on the next couple slides, but this is just data collection, stakeholder engagement to inform our data collection efforts, an inventory of our current freight-related needs and challenges, and then how we implement different projects and prioritize those projects to address those needs and challenges. I wanted to include a couple slides on data collection and analysis because that is one of DRCOG's most significant responsibilities, is the collecting and modeling of freight-related data. And that includes, for example, tonnage and value of commodities by mode, tonnage of goods and quantities flowing in and out of our region, and then also the types of goods that are flowing in and out of our region and sector as well. We conduct analysis on different freight industry clusters, and that entails different employment statistics. We conduct origin destination analysis of how our freight is moving, and also the clustered locations of freight-related businesses with how that changes over the plan's life cycle. Locating these clusters and modeling how these trucks move to and from different locations within our region, it gives us a good idea of how we forecast strain specifically on our. So using the data that we collect, we begin assessing our network's different needs, challenges, and shortcomings. Our collected data allows us to maintain a truck travel reliability index. We also identify truck-specific safety hotspots and inventory truck parking, shortcomings related to truck parking, and identify factors that lead to congestion on our roadways as well. And then for the qualitative side of our data collection efforts, we host different stakeholder engagement forums as part of the plan update process. We conduct survey research. We'll be releasing a specific freight-related survey as part of this plan update. And then we build off statewide research that is completed by CDOT and ensure different connections with our local partners and to make sure that our local communities are finding our plan useful and the data that we collect relevant as well. And then just a brief overview on what we plan on doing for the freight plan update for 2025. And this is kind of where we want a little bit of discussion from you guys as well on what we want to include and a little bit of guidance on that going forward. For updating the plan, we do have a couple of important new activities that we're going to build on and complete in the upcoming year. And that includes an assessment of different municipal policies on freight and goods movement. at the local level, how our land use and zoning codes and also different ordinances affect the movement of freight and how we can assist in different member governments implementing different policies that have one regional goal in mind. We also are producing more specific freight performance measures, which I'll get into a little bit more detail on the next slide, and then establishing a framework for evaluating projects and regional priorities too. Just a couple more details on new plan components. As I said before, CDOT just updated their statewide freight plan, so we want to ensure that there's alignment with that plan statewide and with our regional partners. Also, putting together best practices and highlighting different emerging trends and technology that we can be prepared for. And then just to adhere with that federal guidance that we provide recommendations to our local member governments on local land use analysis and how our regional freight movement affects those local plans as well. This is the important part that we want to talk and discuss in more detail today. As part of our first freight planning effort in 2020, we did a really good job of establishing freight focus areas. And these were specific corridors that we think that needed different investment or were identified as high traffic or regionally significant routes. And we did that with the assistance of CDOT's identification of corridors. So going forward, our primary task for our freight plan this round is to update those different corridors and then establish a framework to identify specific programs, projects, or policies that will kind of show how we transition from a planning document to actual implementation recommendations. So with a project and priority framework in place, we can better prepare and decide how to allocate our transportation dollars. We can also use these metrics to assess how relevant our projects are to not only freight movement within the region, but also improved air quality, safety, and residents living freight focus. And this is just a general project timeline. In 2020, we'll focus on stakeholder engagement and different data collection efforts, which are already underway, and analysis and collection of different land use policies and different markets for that as well. We're already starting to do that and starting to conduct the outreach as of last week. So you guys will be hearing from us related to those requests as well. And then in 2026, we're going to meet and finalize the prioritization framework with our stakeholder team and provide implementation recommendations and, of course, updates of the. As I said before, I want this to be more of a discussion. This is for awareness that we are starting the update of this specific plan. I wanted you guys to know that and be involved in that as well. There will be upcoming stakeholder engagement opportunities with this plan, but this was kind of an overview and primer if in case you guys had any questions or input on this as well. We're more than happy to gather that today.
Are there any questions for Cole? Director Mulvey.
Hi, thank you for this and for the attention on freight. It touches me in a number of ways. My first question has to do with how do we handle a corridor that touches different municipalities of different sizes and impacts? So for example, I-25 in Douglas County is a huge freight corridor, but it impacts each community somewhat differently.
Definitely. So that's part of the reason we're putting together a freight steering committee, because we are planning on doing the analysis by a specific corridor that may touch different specific jurisdictions. But then the regional data that we have, we want to analyze and assess how freight movement within those areas, whether it's emissions reduction, greenhouse gases, or anything related to that, or health outcomes in those communities and those surrounding areas are affected by those specific routes. So whether or not we have to involve multiple jurisdictions, that's something we're going to have to figure out as part of the plan update, and that's what we intend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
In our area, and I'm sure others, the two main issues are not necessarily the impact on the environment, but more the impact on safety and how that affects safety on the road, number one, and number two, the impact on local roads. Example, when the highway's closed, they go around. We started doing a lot of roadsides and found substantial violations ranging from tires to gross vehicle weight violations, but they varied a lot. Driver qualification, hours of service, that sort of thing. So, my request would be to consider as well the impact, not just on the quarter itself and the region for air quality, but also how it impacts safety on the main corridor and these existing communities on either side. Trucks getting off the highway doing X, Y, Z, going through neighborhoods, that sort of thing. And then really to focus also on wildlife safety. That doesn't impact a large part of these corridors, but it is in a big impact in the southern part of Region 1.
Definitely, and I don't want you to take my example as that's something that we're only focusing on. We will be updating, and that's just to say we will be updating our truck safety hotspot analysis as well, and that is something that we would like you guys involved in as we update that and decide how those metrics go into a prioritization framework that can then decide on where we decide to invest in different freight movement as well. As far as enforcement goes, that is more of CDOT and the State Patrol's purview, but we want to figure out how we can fit in as far as a planning agency goes in those roles as well, and that's where we want your guys' input as well. We can talk further.
Executive Director Rick.
Thank you, sir, very much. Cole, thanks for the presentation. My question related to a comment that Director Mulvey made related to safety, incident management, alternate routes. Will alternate route planning be associated with this study, or could it be?
That's something that we're assessing now with the land use component of this, is if we have a role to play in when trucks are rerouted off of a different highway for different safety reasons or just logistical reasons as well. I don't have an answer for you for that at the moment, but that is something that we're going to figure out as part of the plan update.
Dr. Banger.
A question, are you then also going to be working with the railroads? Freight they will carry, and whether or not, what are just materials?
Yes.
Will you be getting that kind of information? Are you getting cooperation from the railroads?
We have not specifically, as I said before, we are just now starting to reach out to different members of both public and private sector agencies, including the railroads, to have membership on our freight steering committee as part of the plan update. We had railroad participation as part of the 2020 update. We intend on having that, and we're going to be very intentional on making sure that they're involved in this one as well. CDOT had good luck working with the railroads with their statewide freight plan. We plan on building that as well as part of this plan update.
My only concern, of course, is these railroad tracks are going through our cities. I have often wondered, assuming there's quite a bit of oil and gas that's being transported, sure, is it the responsibility of the cities if there is an accident? What kind of response is given to that accident? So far, I think our region's been hard to train accidents and freight falling over and creeks being whatnot. But I'm assuming then it's a city responsibility.
I don't have a specific answer for you on that. That's something that I would have to check and get back to you on.
Aaron Clark.
I was so proud. Hi. So I'm not a freight expert in any way, shape, or form, but I really appreciate what we're hearing here. And I'm just thinking broadly about kind of this approach of kind of DRCOG as a convener of all these different stakeholders and ways to get at this information. So we understand that it's not this organization's role to address all these things directly. You're not enforcing commercial licenses and things like that. But an effort like this absolutely is one to help flesh out those types of questions, find the gaps, and provide the data that those other organizations need, right, to act on those things. And so I will very much love to see that that's kind of a lot of what comes out of this. And as you're talking about safety, I'm also thinking of just impact of freight transportation on road conditions, and kind of what does that mean in terms of the routes that we're looking at, and from a capital, maintenance and replacement kind of perspective. But I think, yeah, so I love what I'm hearing in terms of never need to reinvent wheels, see what has already been happening, build on that, and bring together these groups to both identify gaps, figure out who needs to be doing what, and help them see that and help them come up with plans to do that. I think if that's part of what comes out of all this, then that would be really successful.
Most definitely. I think our plan, as it stands now from 2020, does a really good job of outlining the existing conditions that we have. But in order to establish what we exactly want our role to be in the region, we're going to have to do pretty extensive stakeholder engagement and outreach, and sit down and discuss that with different member governments and partner agencies. So that's something that that's something we're planning on doing, and we genuinely appreciate the involvement of different boards and committees.
Okay, I saw Jacob's hand go up. Is there, okay, then we'll come to you. Jacob?
Okay, I did it this time, great. Thank you, Chair Baker. Yeah, just to Director Clark's points, and a couple other points have been brought up, a couple of big picture issues. One is that we do this in partnership with CDOT and with all of you and all the other stakeholders. CDOT does a statewide freight plan, and we typically work in concert with CDOT. We have a legacy of doing that to kind of build on those efforts, so we're not reinventing the wheel. But in this freight plan, in our multimodal freight plan, we do take a special focus, obviously, on the DRCOG region and the freight issues that some of you have already been bringing up that are specific to our metropolitan area. So that's kind of the lens in which we approach this. We're also a participant on the statewide Freight Advisory Council. Cole attends those meetings regularly. That's also a good forum in terms of getting into some of the specifics of these freight issues. Again, some of those that you've brought up are the very issues that are discussed by the Freight Advisory Council. We also have access to kind of some national data, CDOT does as well, relating to freight commodity flows and kind of the freight that's coming through this region in this state. We tend to think of freight as coal trains coming down from Wyoming, and that's certainly important. But something on the order, and Cole, please correct me if I'm wrong, roughly about 96% of our freight tonnage or freight activity through Colorado is actually semi-trucks. It's actually truck-based freight that comes through. And when you think about freight and goods movement, if you expand kind of that perspective a little bit, freight these days is our Amazon delivery trucks. How many people got an Amazon delivery this week? Right? So, yeah. So those are all issues that we're paying attention to, and those reverberate through in terms of things like safety and alternate routes, and some of those other issues you've mentioned. So we're trying to take both that wide angle lens, but a metropolitan Denver, DRCOG region specific theme to this freight work that Cole's going to lead. Thanks.
I refuse to answer the question about Amazon.
How many Amazon packages did you receive this week?
Yeah. Darius Papa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I think I got it right the first time. All right, Cole, the fantastic presentation, and of course, we appreciate the continued collaboration with that, because I think it's an important issue that comes into with the movement of freight, making sure everybody has the goods that they need. And I do want to echo what Jacob said. The vast majority of the freight that comes into not only this region but the state is through trucks, but we also have the railroads, and in a small portion some of our aviation pieces as well, and all those have to work together in order to make sure people get the goods they need. And all of the other issues that the other members of this board have bring up. So, and I think it's germane because of the potential, some of the new regulations that have come in from the state legislature in regards to CMB travel, and some of the new funding that comes in from not only that we get from the federal government, but what one of the recent enterprises has put into some of our local areas, particularly Adams County and the city of Aurora, the Fuels Impact Enterprise, and helping them prioritize projects that help with the movement of fuel transportation throughout the state. So continuing looking forward to that collaboration. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Guzman.
Thank you. It kind of has been answered, but I want to see clarity. Mr. Nieder, are you including in looking at the freight that's moving around the United States Post Office as well? The Postal Service has a huge plant on Quebec. In one of your pictures, the water tower near the MPA is there, and those trucks are moving a heavy amount of mail, but it's freight transportation because it's coming in on trucks out from out of state. Some of it's parcels and delivery. They're doing the last mile work with providers like Amazon, and yes, all of those. Are they included in this? Because that's moving by rail, aviation, and road. And so with one of the largest freight systems in the U.S., are you meeting with the Western area plant manager out there and talking to the MPA manager?
So in addition to the data that we have from DRCOG and the data that we collect as an agency, we also have access to INRIC's data, which is surface transportation freight movement. I assume that is included, what you're talking about is included within that data because it is surface level freight movement, and that would be included in that data collection analysis at the census tract level. But that's something I'll have to double check and get back to you on.
I would just highly suggest that you make sure you have that data in there because there are seasonal fluctuations, and the post office often has more freight on the road, freight movement to get, and it's daily because they're processing it here in the metro area, but that's the mail that's going out to other processing areas. We have the automated mail facility on Quebec, and there's at least 50 to 60 trucks that are leaving in rounds throughout the day to get mail moved around the state, and everything goes back there to be collected and redistributed nationally. Former postal worker, hi. But also the fluctuation for times of the year, Christmas is heavy, election season is heavy for mail and moving that thing around. So there's a lot of subtlety with the post office and what their business looks like, but also with respect to moving packages around because they are often filling in the last mile for other delivery services, and any one of them, they have the charge of being able to do that the last 10 feet delivery, right? Not even the last mile. And so they're often taking on a larger burden and working through the weekends where other private entities may not be able to do the same thing that they are. They're also moving things interregionally to get to the rural areas. And so they end in the suburbs, and then their regional carriers take off over that. So just a concern that you might want to look and make sure that you've got that information in there. I don't know how that works with the intergovernmental phase of this, but it's got to be relevant information to making sure.
Definitely, that's incredibly important. That's one of the best practices in the section of the freight plan update that we want to cover that CDOT and their statewide freight plan doesn't necessarily have purview on, which is the logistics of final mile delivery. Everyone is doing it in an effective manner. So that's definitely data that we want to. So I'll confirm that for you and reach out with that as well.
Director Maurer.
Thank you, and thank you, Cole. It was a number of years ago when we had a presentation at DRCOG, and it was over the statewide freight study that was, being looked at the time. And one thing that was brought up was the truck parking and the shortage of, the stops and overnight stops. Some of those around the state had been, they've been taken out for various reasons, and they're not put back. It's not a favorite thing for a community to have, but it's a need. And so what we see with this shortage is that you see your trucks parked on ramps, you see them parked in other areas where they shouldn't be, right? So it just it's not a good thing for anybody to just see these trucks randomly parked in different areas. And I know, like, some of the trucking, like Safeway, they used to allow their drivers to sit in a parking lot at I-70 and Colorado Boulevard. They would let them sit there, but that was one company that allowed that. So I'm hoping you maybe can flush a little bit of that out and see if it's getting better.
Definitely, we want to build off of CDOT's 2019 parking inventory and study and utilize and look for different opportunities to implement their pilot program, which is a public-private partnership for truck parking. The issue that we face statewide and actually nationally is that we generally have the funding for capital to produce truck parking. We do not have the ability for operational funds or to maintain it going forward, and that's been our difficulty. So that's something that we're going to focus on and kind of build off of CDOT's existing studies going forward with this as well.
Thank you, Cole.
Darius.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback onto that, the study continues. I think we're in phase 3 with it. So if I got which phase we're in, so we're continuing to take a look at it because it is an important issue, not only within this region, but statewide as people travel, especially when there's inclement weather and people need to get off the roads. So they're not parking in local communities and on the on-ramps and everywhere else that they shouldn't be, and making sure that that's done in a safe manner, but echoing everything else that Cole said about that as well. So happy to talk further if you would like to have more information on that as well.
Other questions? Yes, Shelley.
I would just add from a commission standpoint that trying to reinstate, refurbish rest areas around the state has been a big priority. I mean, Commissioner Holguin can talk to it more than I can, but there are constraints in how those can be funded. But there was an initiative about a year ago, I think, with the legislature that didn't end up passing that would have provided some funding for that. But we'll keep plugging at it because we.
Other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Thank you very much, Mr. Nieder.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to administrative items, and I know we're getting close to our time here, but I did want to acknowledge we all in our organizations have folks that move on, and he's gone.
Wait a little bit.
I'll wait to go on to that. I was going to go ahead, but we'll go ahead with CDOT. Shelley, Director Holguin.
All right, I can take a stab at it and then hand it over to my colleagues here. So CDOT has had a busy month, as always. This month, or actually just this last week, CDOT completed the town halls. They have been concluded. Our last one was just this last Thursday, so I don't know if any of you had a chance to join, but if you did, I hope you enjoyed the call. We had wonderful engagement and great questions, over 5,000 people plugged in. So I think it was like 5,000, don't quote me on the last number, but I believe it was close to 5,400 people. So pretty impressive. I do want to highlight and thank Dr. Cog and Jacob for the support and for being there. Really, really helped when we got the questions that were not CDOT related and that were not, to make sure that people got the information that they needed or that they saw. We had some really interesting questions that came up. Some of it highlighted the importance of bike lanes and the need for multimodal transportation. I would say that that's one of the biggest areas. Safety on our roads and the steps that are being taken to influence driver behavior, because our listeners were really concerned about increase in speeds, increase in cell phone usage despite being now illegal. And so there is a lot of concern about safety on our roads, and it's something that we have to think about, continue to think about. They also wanted to know timeline on road resurfacing and infrastructure and potholes and things like that. And ultimately plans to expand public transportation. And as we know, this is an area issue that I'm sure came up in other town halls. So overall, very informative. I really appreciated the opportunity to listen to constituents and see what is coming up for them, because as we know, it highlights the importance of this space, because to them, this is not, oh, this is CDOT jurisdiction, this is City of Denver jurisdiction. To them, it's like, I have problems with freight coming on Pecos Boulevard, and I need you to do something about it. And so really appreciated that. Other updates, we have this month we have a condensed one-day Transportation Commission workshop and meeting because of Juneteenth holiday. We have, and that will follow the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise meeting and the Fuel Impact Enterprise meeting. Darius, anything else?
I would like Commissioner Cook, if you had any comments before I go, if you could, please.
Okay. Really a good recap. I would note that on tomorrow's agenda, we've got the Joint Service IGA, that all the agencies involved in that effort to initiate service along the Front Range passenger rail to include potentially the ability to provide an extension line. And that's coming to the commission, I think, partly this month due to changes we'll see in the commission makeup. This is the last month we'll have all the people who have been involved in the updates so far. And I don't know whether I'm stepping out of my area, but I did want to acknowledge that Jessica is not, has not applied to re-up. So we'll be losing her as well as Director Adams and, or excuse me, Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Stewart. And that, to me, is just a huge loss to the agency. And I wanted to thank you publicly here.
I'm sorry, I forgot that minor update. I chose to not seek reappointment. Lots of personal reasons, but more importantly, my organization with the changes in funding is really impacting, and just it's a time issue. But
thank you on behalf of this committee, though, for your participation, and we really appreciate it. It was great to get to know you. There you go. Not moving out of the area like somebody we know. So
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that was the one piece that I wanted to mention, as well as we will miss the combined knowledge and all of the information and support that Commissioner Holguin, Commissioner Adams, and Commissioner Stewart have provided over these years, in addition to the time that I have not only been in the current position, but was the deputy director there of my current division, and previous positions as well. Commissioner Stewart has served, and Commissioner Adams have served for a long time. And additionally, Commissioner Garcia will be will not be seeking reappointment, so we'll have a new commissioner, and that is Southwest Colorado. And I do want to thank, I think you were alluding to this, Mr. Chair, earlier, but thank Director Papstor for the relationship that we have worked with all these years, not only with through the transportation planning that we've done here, but the stuff previously in 2 jobs I had to go with national performance measures, going all the way back then and working through all the stuff that came in with the FAST Act. So thank you to you, Ron, and to Commissioner Holguin and Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Adams. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's what I was alluding to earlier, but we'll go ahead. First of all, I want to make sure RTD, Director Guzman or Director Soroy, whoever would like to go first.
Thank you for the opportunity. August 2025 service planning changes and proposals are online currently. You can find them at rtd-denver.com/service-changes. There's a big red button so that you can look at each route. 44 is on there, double check it. Shout out to my people. But there's a lot going on, and it's time to reinstate service trippers. So that's school time, additional services that run past places where we need to move folks. So some of that's going to be really important. So folks, please jump on there and look at it. Tonight there is a virtual meeting to discuss that with the planners from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. You can access the information on the RTD website. The Performance Committee received our employee experience survey last week, and we will be receiving our customer experience and community value surveys for the current year next week on Monday. All good news. Excellent, great news, both regionally and nationally by comparison. I'll leave you with that. Always leave you wanting more. But it does demonstrate the dedicated leadership of Deborah Johnson, our General Manager and CEO, and the work that she has done in terms of really supporting the education, training, listening to the agency employees, and providing paths to additional communication to keep them in retention of the services at RTD. We are in a waiting pattern with the CBA with ATU 1001 for that to come back to the board. It is in their hands right now, and that should be wrapping up, I believe, by the end of this month, depending on what happens with the union side, and then comes back to the board, I believe, after that is finished. The RTD Police Department, since we last met, has sworn in our new Chief of Police, Steve Martingano, and they were pleased to announce a report with a significant decrease of reports of illicit and malfeasant activity throughout the region that made national news. And while we work to improve our live look-in system on all forms of transportation throughout the region, that work is underway. We are also changing out some vinyl seat covers from fabric to make them more easily cleanable and create a more welcoming environment. I think that's really important. So you'll start seeing some of those on light rail and bus trains and buses, sorry. The new Deputy CEO, Angel Peña, has hit the ground running, as well as our new CFO, Kelly Mackey, and they have been put to task this month. The Performance Committee and the Finance and Planning Committee took on yeoman's work this month, trying to get things passed through for discussion and recommendation to the board. I think we moved 10 different items between those two committees. OSS had discussions on other matters. We got Title VI updates. I'm sad Aaron left. Our equitable transportation-oriented development plan also moved forward. And in fact, this meeting next Tuesday will be the first time we put that to practice on Central Park, looking at a development that should be using DHA, CHAFA, and other funds to be able to develop some transit-oriented development at Central Park along the A-line. Heads up, Calumet Light Rail funding was approved by the committee. Will go before the board for approval. That project will take place this summer. It's a smaller stretch, but it's the one that is downtown, so there will be some impacts, but we're working with Doty and the City and County of Denver to make sure that we're not interrupting traffic as much as possible, but we do need to replace those light rails. They've been about, 30 years old, something like that. One of the older lines that we need to just dig out and replace completely. As that work proceeds forward, we also approved and apportioned money to be able to work forward towards the inter-block downtown rail reconstruction project that's going on. And one last thing, there's over 900 bus stops throughout the RTD. RTD has auspices over about 300 of those at most. We are doing a big study to figure out what we have, where we have it, what the conditions are, if they're ADA compliant, and what it's going to take to work with local partners to be able to update some of that infrastructure so people have a safe place to stay in, whether places to sit, compliance with the law, and also trying to make it more accessible for folks. That's coming. I don't have any more information. We're in the midst of working on that right now, but I just wanted to let you all know that as that study rolls out, your input will be really important as a region to make sure that we have that information updated. And because most of those do not belong properly to RTD on our real estate, we do rely on the partnership we have with our local municipalities and counties to make sure that we figure out a way to take care of them, maintain them, and keep them welcoming for all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
With that comprehensive, the only one thing to add, just to add to the Director Guzman's discussion, our bus stop effort, we will be reaching out to do some direct coordination and communication with local jurisdictions on that, probably be in the early fall timeframe.
Great. Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, sir, very much. Just one thing on the RTD thing is just comical. So I had the opportunity to meet the new police chief. He gave a presentation to Metro Mayor's Caucus earlier this month, I believe. And before he made the presentation, he said, you know, everybody says he sounds like Ray Romano from everybody. And listen, once you hear it, you will not be able to unhear it. He is a dead ringer for Ray Romano.
Great, thank you very much. And I do want to also publicly state how appreciative we are of Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Stewart as well. Their participation has been so helpful to this committee and to DRCOG as a whole. And of course, Commissioner Stewart is the winner of our John V. Christensen Award, and so we have recognized her quite a bit before, but I just want to be on record for saying about that. And again, I would ask Doug or Ron to say a few words about Ron's moving on to Houston.
Oh, I got a few words. Turn that recording off, Cam. No, listen, and I'm not sure everybody in the room knows this. Maybe they do, that Ron is, he's moving on. This is his last RTC meeting. He's been here, just over 7 years now, and a lot of great work have been done. We're really gonna miss him here, but we're thrilled about his new opportunity down in the Houston-Galveston area. He'll be performing, I don't know why I'm saying it. He could probably tell you exactly what he's gonna be doing, but he's the Chief Transportation Officer, so basically have a similar role down there in the Houston-Galveston area, or as I like to call them, HGAC.
Would you like to say a few words?
I mean, I'm loath to pass up an opportunity. I won't spend a lot of time. It's been just a privilege and honor to serve this region and work with all of you and the partners. Don't forget how special this table is, the Regional Transportation Committee, the opportunity for leadership from RTD and CDOT and DRCOG to come together and shape important transportation decisions for this region is really unique and special. And I can't express how much I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with all of you over the last 7 years in assisting you and in service to this region. It's been amazing for me, but for a really unique opportunity, you'd be stuck with me for the duration. And I'm thrilled and excited about that new opportunity, but it is bittersweet in terms of leaving all of you and the people that I've had the privilege to work with and for in this region has been amazing. The last 11 years in Colorado has been really special for me and my wife, and we've appreciated all the opportunities we've had here. I'll miss that. Again, I won't belabor the point, but never forget for you how special this place is and the work that you do together. You don't always agree, we don't always agree, but this is the place where we work through those and end up making the best decisions that you all can on behalf of this region and the people that live and work here. So thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. And in the interim, after Ron leaves, Doug Rex, give him a call if you need anything that you would have. So that's good. Anything else for the good of the group? All right, our next meeting is July 15th. And don't forget to pick up your get out of jail free pass from Cam if you park downstairs. And thank you, everyone. Safe travels home or back to work.